Hello and welcome to this continuing second look exploring session, completing our second look, or our first take at a second look at the Misfortunes of Arthur, Uther Pendragon's son, reduced into tragical notes by Thomas Hughes, one of the Society of Gray's Inn, and here set down as it passed from under his hands and as it was presented, and indeed definitely as it was presented, or at least in his original script. And we are not doing the bits that somebody else wrote for himself. We are doing the bits that Hughes, as he would have wanted it, as best we can. This is a fast-paced run. We're going to be running through the second half, Act 3 onwards, at pace. We won't be reading stage directions, not that there really are any. We're just going to be getting the sense of its flow and its energy as we career into the second half of the play. If you've missed the first half of the play, go back and watch the first half of the play. It helps. But broadly speaking, that's the usurper side of the equation. That's Mordred awaiting the arrival of Arthur back to Britain. Arthur's been abroad campaigning. And this half the play, Arthur actually lands. So we haven't had any Arthur action. And don't be confused, the person playing Arthur also played Mordred, but they are related, so it's entirely logical and plausible. Reading today, Arthur, King of the Britons, is...
Lynsey Beauchamp, actor, zooming in from Kirkcaldy, Scotland.
Reading Howell, Conan, and second chorus is...
Tom from Brighton.
Reading Aschillius, first chorus, and Gildas is...
That would be me, Rachael, actor on the East Coast.
Reading Cador and Gorlois, is...
Hi, I'm Greg, and I'm really looking forward to doing that Gorlois voice again.
Reading Herald, fourth chorus, and the Epilogue is...
Liza Graham at the end of all things.
And reading third chorus today is...
Hi, I'm Eric, and I'm just like the footnote for today.
And no, never the footnote, no. And I'm your host, Robert Crighton. I'll be reading Gawin and also Nuncius coming up. So, without further ado, we're going to dive into Act 3. For those following along with the text, we are not doing the dumb show. We are not even going to attempt to do any of the dumb shows. We will let the action flow on as it goes. So, we have the return of Arthur and Associates.
Is this the welcome that my realm prepares? Be these the thanks I win for all my wars? Thus to forbid me land? To slay my friends? To make their blood disdain my country's shores? My son, belike, lest that our force should faint for want of wars, prepared us wars himself. He thought perhaps it mote impair our fame if none rebelled whose foil might praise our power. Is this the fruit of Mordred's forward youth and tender age, discreet beyond his years? O false and guileful life, O crafty world, how cunningly conveyest thou fraud unseen, the ambitious seemeth meek, the wanton chaste. Disguised vice for virtue vaunts itself. Thus Arthur, thus hath fortune played her part, blind for thy weal, clear-sighted for thy woe. Thy kingdom's gone, thy sphere affords no faith, thy son rebels, of all thy wonted pomp no jot is left, and fortune hides her face. No place is left for prosperous plight. Mishaps have room and ways to run and walk at will. Lo, Cador, both our estates, your daughter's trust, my son's respect, our hopes reposed in both.
The time, O puissant prince, permits not now to moan our wrongs or search each several sore. Since Arthur thus have ransacked all abroad, what marvel is it if Mordred rave at home? When far and near your wars had warmed the world, what wars were left for him but civil wars? All which requires revenge with sword and fire, and to pursue your foes with a present force in just attempts Mars gives a rightful doom.
Nay, rather, Cador, let them run their race, and leave the heavens revengers of my wrong. Since Britain's prosperous state is thus debased in servile sort to Mordred's cursed pride, let me be thrall and lead a private life. None can refuse the yoke his country bears. But as for wars, in sooth, my flesh abhors to bid the battle to my proper blood. Great is the love which nature doth enforce from kin to kin, but most from sire to son.
The noble neck disdains the servile yoke. Where rule hath pleased, subjection seems strange. A king ought always to prefer his realm before the love he bears to kin or son. For realms destroyed are ne'er restored again, but time may send you kin and sons enough.
How hard it is to rule the aspiring mind, and what a kingly point it seems to those whose lordly hands the stately sceptre sways, still to pursue the drift they first decreed. My wonted mind and kingdom lets me know. Think not that if you drive this hazard on, he, desperate, will resolve to win or die, whereof who knows which were the greater guilt, the sire to slay the son, or son the sire?
If bloody Mars do so extremely sway that either son or sire must needs be slain, give law the choice. Let him die that deserves. Each impotent affection notes a want. No worse a vice than lenity in kings. Remiss indulgence soon undoes a realm. He teaches how to sin that winks at sins, and bids offend that suffereth an offence. The only hope of leave increaseth crimes, and he that pardoneth one emboldeneth all to break the laws. Each patience fostereth wrong, but vice severely punished faints at foot, and creeps no further off than where it falls. One sour example will present more vice than all the best persuasions in the world. Rough vigour looks outright and still prevails. Smooth mildness looks too many ways to thrive, wherefore, since Mildred's crimes have wronged the laws in so extreme a sort as is too strange, let right and justice rule with rigour's aid, and work his rack at length, although too late, that damning laws, so damned by the laws, he may receive his deep deserved doom. So let it fare with all that dare the like. Let sword, let fire, let torment be their end. Severity upholds both realm and rule.
Ah, too severe, far from a father's mind. Compassion is as fit for kings as wrath. Laws must not lower, rule oft admitteth ruth. So hate as if there were yet cause to love. Take not their lives as foes which may be friends. To spoil my son were to despoil myself. Oft whiles we seek our foes, we seek our foils. Let's rather seek how to allure his mind with good deserts. Deserts may win the worst.
Where Cato first had saved a thief from death, and after was himself condemned to die, when else no one would execute the doom, who but the thief did undertake the task? If too much bounty works so bad effects in thankless friends, what for a ruthless foe? Let laws have still their course, the ill-disposed grudge at their lives, to whom they owe too much.
But yet where men with reconciled minds renew their love with recontinued grace, Atonement frames them friends of former foes and makes the moods of swelling wrath to swage. No faster friendship than that grows from grief when melting minds with mutual ruth relent. How close the severed skin unites again when salves have smoothly healed the former hurts.
I never yet saw a heart so smoothly healed, but that the scar bewrayed the former wound. Yea, where the salve did soonest close the skin, the sore was oft covered up than cured, which festering deep and filled within at last with such a breach grew greater than at first. But then for minds which have revenging moods, and ne'er forget the cross they forced bear, whereto if reconcilement come, it makes the one to one secure, whilst t'other works his will. Atonement self defeats, but oft defers revenge. Beware a reconciled foe.
Well, what avails to linger in this life which fortune but reserves for greater grief? This breath draws on but matter of mishap. Death only frees the guiltless from a noise. Whoso hath felt the force of greedy fates, endured the last decree of grisly death, shall never yield his captive arms to chains, nor, drawn in triumph, deck the victor's pomp.
What mean these words? Is Arthur forced to fear? Is this the fruit of your continual wars, even from the first remembrance of your youth?
My youth, I grant, and prime of budding years, puffed up with pride and fond desire of praise, foreweening naught what perils might ensue, adventured all, and wrought to will the reins. But now this age requires a sager course, and will, advised by harms, to wisdom yields. Those swelling spirits, the self-same cause which first set them on Gog, even fortune's favours quailed. And now mind oftenest scapes do scare me most. I fear the trap whereat I oft have tripped. Experience tells me plain that chance is frail, and oft the better past, the worse to come.
Resist these doubts till 'tis ill to yield to harms. 'Tis safest then to dare when most you fear.
As safe sometimes to fear when most we dare. A causeless courage gives repentance place.
If fortune form,
Each way on me she frowns, for win I, lose I, both procure my grief.
But case you win, what grief?
Admit I do, what joy,
Then may you rule.
when I may die.
To rule is much.
Small if we covet naught.
Who covets not a crown?
He that discerns the sword aloft.
That hangeth fast.
But by a hair.
Right holds it up.
Wrong pulls it down.
The commons help the king.
They sometimes hurt.
At least the peers.
Held if allegiance want.
Oh, yet sovereignty.
Not if subjection fail.
Doubt not the realm is yours.
Mine till now.
And shall be still.
If Mordred list.
'Twere well your crown were won.
Perhaps 'tis better lost.
the name of rule should move a princely mind.
Trust me, bad things have often glorious names.
The greatest food that fortune can afford.
A dangerous good that wisdom would eschew.
Yet wait the hearsay of the old renowned, and fame the wanderer of former age, which still extols the fact of worthiest wights, preferring no deserts before your deeds. Even she exhorts you to this new attempt, which left untried your winnings be but loss.
Small credit will be given of matters past to fame, the flatterer of the former age. Were all believed which antique Bruit imports, yet wisdom weighs the peril joined to praise. Rare is the fame, mark well all ages gone, which hath not hurt the house it most enhanced. Besides, fame's but a blast that sounds a while and quickly stints, and then is quite forgot. Look, whatsoe'er our virtues have achieved, the chaos vast and greedy time devours. Today all Europe rings with Arthur's praise. 'Twill be as hushed as if I ne'er had been. What boots it then to venture life or limb for that which needs ere long we leave or lose?
Can blind affection so much blear the wise, or love of graceless son so witch the sire, that what concerns the honour of a prince with country's good and subjects' just request should lightly be contemned by a king? When Lucius sent but for his tribute due, you went with 13 kings to root him out. Have Romans, for requiring but their own, abode your 9 years' brunts? Shall Mordred scape that wronged you thus in honour, queen and realm? Were this no cause to stir a king to wrath, yet should your conquests late achieved against Rome inflame your mind with thirst of full revenge?
Indeed, continual wars have chafed our minds, and good success hath bred impatient moods. Rome puffs us up and makes us too fierce. There, Britons, there we stand, whence Rome did fall. Thou, Lucius, makest me proud, thou heavest my mind. For what? Shall I esteem a crown aught else than as a gorgeous crest of easeless helm, or as some brittle mould of glorious pomp, or glittering glass which, while it shines, it breaks? All this a sudden chance may dash, and not perhaps with 13 kings, or in 9 years. All may not find so slow and lingering fates. What that my country cries for due remorse, and some relief for long sustained toils. By seas and lands I daily wrought her wrack, and spareless spent her life on every foe. Each where my soldiers perished, whilst I won, throughout the world my conquest was their spoil, a fair reward for all their deaths, for all their wars abroad, to give them civil wars. What boots it then, reserved from foreign foils, to die at home? What end of ruthless rage? At least let age and nature, worn to naught, provide at length their graves with wished groans. Pity their hoary hairs, their feeble fists, their withered limbs, their strengths consumed in camp. Must they still end their lives amongst the blades? Rests there no other fate whilst Arthur reigns? What deem you me, a fury fed with blood, or some Cyclopean born and bred for brawls? Think on the mind that Arthur bears to peace. Can Arthur please you nowhere but in wars? Be witness, heavens, how far 'tis from my mind therewith to spoil or sack my native soil. I cannot yield. It brooks not in my breast to seek her ruin, whom I erst have ruled. What relics now soe'er both civil broils and foreign wars have left, let those remain. There are few enough, and Britons fall too fast.
Lo, here is a herald sent from Mordred's camp. A forward message, if I read it right. We mought not store his wrath, but this may. Persuasions cannot move a Briton's mood, and yet sooner stung with present wrong.
Hail, peerless prince, whiles fortune would our king, though now bereft of crown and former rule. Vouchsafe me leave my message to impart, no jot enforced, but as your son affords. If here you stay but 3 days to an end, and not forthwith discharge your bands and host, 'tis Mordred's oath, assure yourself to die. But if you find your courage so to serve as for to stand to your defence with force, in Cornwall, if you dare, he'll try it out.
Is this the choice my son doth send his sire? And must I die or try it if I dare? To die were ill, thus to be dared is worse. Display my standard forth, let trump and drum call soldiers near to hear their sovereign's hest. O friends and fellows of my weariest toils, which have borne out with me so many brunts and desperate storms of wars and brain-sick Mars, lo now the 100th month wherein we win, hath all the blood we spent in foreign coasts, the wounds and deaths and winters bode abroad, deserved thus to be disgraced at home? All Britain rings of wars, no town nor field but swarms with armed troops, the mustering trains stop up the streets, no less a tumult raised than when Hengistus fell, and Horsa, fierce with treacherous truce, did overrun the realm. Each corner threateneth death, both far and near is Arthur vexed. What if my force hath failed and standard fallen, and ensigns all been torn, and Roman troops pursued me at the heels, with luckless wars essayed in foreign soils? Now that our fortune heaves us up thus high, and heavens themselves renew our old renown, must we be dared? Nay, let that princock come, that knows not yet himself nor Arthur's force, that ne'er yet waged wars, that's yet to learn to give the charge. Yea, let that princock come, with sudden soldiers pampered up in peace, and gowned troops and wantons worn with ease, with sluggish Saxons' crew and Irish kerns and Scottish aid, and false red-shanked Picts, whose slaughters yet must teach their former foil. They shall perceive with sorrow ere they part, when all their toils be told, that nothing works so great a waste and ruin in this age as do my wars. O Mordred, blessed son, no doubt these market mates so highly hired must be the stay of thy usurped state. And lest my head, inclining now to years, should joy the rest which yet it never reaped, the traitor Gilla, trained in treacherous jars, is chief in arms to reave me of my realm. What corner, from all my wars, shall shroud my bloodless age? What seat for due deserts? What town or field for ancient soldiers' rest? What house, what roof, what walls for wearied limbs? Stretch out again, stretch out your conquering hands. Still we must use the force so often used. To those that will pursue a wrong with wreak, he giveth all that once denies the right. Thou soil, which erst Diana did ordain, the certain seat and bower of wandering brute, thou realm, which I reverence as my saint, thou stately Britain, the ancient type of Troy, bear with my forced wrongs. I am not he that willing would impeach thy peace with wars. Lo, here both far and wide I, conqueror, stand. Arthur, each wear thine own, thy liege, thy king. Condemn not mine attempts. He, only he is sole in fault that makes me thus thy foe. Here I renounce all leagues and treats of truce. Thou, fortune, henceforth art my guard and guide. Hence peace, on wars run fates, let Mars be judge. I erst did trust to right, but now to rage. Go, tell the boy that Arthur fears no brags. In vain he seeks to brave it with his sire. I come, Mordred, I come, but to thy pain. Yea, tell the boy his angry father comes to teach a novice both to die and dare.
If we, without offence, O greatest guide of British name, may pour our just complaints, we most dislike that your too mild a mood have thus withheld your hand and sword from strokes. For what? Are we behind in any help? Or without cause did you misdoubt our force? Or truth so often tried with good success? Go to, conduct your army to the field, place man to man, oppose us to our foes. As much we need to work as to wish your wield.
Seems it so sour to win by civil wars? Were it to gore with pike my father's breast, were it to rive and cleave my brother's head, were it to tear piecemeal my dearest child, I would enforce my grudging hands to help. I cannot term that place my native soil, where to your trumpets send their warlike sounds, if case required to batter down the towers of any town that Arthur would destroy. Yea, were it of Britain's self which most I read, her bulwarks, fortress, rampiers, walls, and fence, these arms should rear the rams to run them down. Wherefore, ye princes and the rest, my mates, if what I have averred in all your names be likewise such as stands to your content, let all your yeas avow my premise true.
Yea! Yea! Yea!
Wherein, renowned king, myself are mine, my life, my kingdom, and all Denmark's power, may serve your turn, account them all your own. King of Norway, whatsoe'er my force or Norway aid may help in your attempts, I vow it here.
As heretofore I always served your hest, so let this day be judge of Gawin's trust. Either my brother Mordred dies the death by mine assault, or I at least by his.
Since thus, my faithful mates, with vows alike and equal love to Arthur's cause you join, in common care to wreak my private wrongs, lift up your ensigns' efts, stretch out your strengths, pursue your fates, perform your hopes to Mars. Lo, here the last and outmost work for blades. This is the time that all our valour craves. This time by due desert restores again our goods, our lands, our lives, our weal, and all. This time declares by fates whose cause is best. This condemns the vanquished side of guilt. Wherefore, if for my sake you scorn yourselves, and spare no sword nor fire in my defence, then whiles my censure justifies your cause, fight amain, and clear your blades from crime. The judge once changed, no wars are free from guilt. The better cause gives us the greater hope of prosperous wars, wherein, if once I hap to spy the wonted signs that never failed their guide, your threatening looks, your fiery eyes, and bustling bodies pressed to present spoil, the field is won. Even then, methinks I see the wonted wastes and scattered heads of foes, the Irish carcass kicked, and Picts oppressed, and Saxons slain to swim in streams of blood. I quake with hope. I can assure you all, we never had a greater match in hand. March on, delay no fates, whilst fortune fawns, the greatest praise of war consists in speed.
Since thus, victorious king, your peers, allies, your lords, and for all your powers be ready pressed, for good, for bad, for whatsoe'er shall hap to spend both limb and life in your defence, cast off all doubt, and rest yourself on Mars. A hopeless fear forbids a heavy fate.
In sooth, good Cador, so our fortune fares, as needs we must return to wonted force. To wars we must, but such unhappy wars as leave no hope for right or wrong to scape. Myself foresees the fate. It cannot fall without our dearest blood. Much may the mind of pensive sire presage, whose son so sins, or truth, or trust, or blood, or bands be broke. The seeds are sown that spring to future spoil. My son, my nephew, yea, each side myself, nearer than all, woes me, too near, my foe. Well, 'tis my plague for life so lewdly led. The price of guilt is still a heavier guilt. For were it light, that even by birth myself was bad, I made my sister bad. Nay, were that also light, I have begot as bad, yea worse, an heir assigned to all our sins. Such was his birth. What base, what vulgar vice could once be looked for of so noble blood? The deeper guilt descends, the more it roots. The younger imps effect the huger crimes.
When many men assent to civil wars and yield a suffrage to enforce the fates, no man bethinks him of his own mishap, but turns that luck unto another's share. Whereas if fear did first forewarn each foil, such love to fight would breed no Briton's bane. And better were still to preserve our peace than thus to vent for peace through waging wars. Would folly to forego such certain haps, and in their stead to feed uncertain hopes. Such hopes as oft have puffed up many a realm, till cross success hath pressed it down as deep, whiles blind affection, fetched from private cause, misguiding wit hath masked in wisdom's veil, pretending what in purpose it abhorred.
Peace has three foes encamped: ambition, wrath, and envy, which subdued we should not fail to find eternal peace. 'Tis in our power to joy it all at will, and there be few, but if they will, they may, but yet even those who like the name of peace, through fond desire repine at peace itself. Between the hopes whereof and it itself, 1,000 things may fall that further wars. The speech sometimes that treats of truce is slashed and cut asunder with the sword. Nor seld the name of peace doth edge our minds and sharpeneth on our fury till we fight, so that the mention made of love and rest is oft a whetstone to our hate and rage.
Lo, here the end that kingly pomp imparts, the quiet rest that princely palace plights. Care upon care and every day new, fresh rising tempest tires the tossed mind. Who strives to stand in pomp of princely court, or giddy top and calm of slippery court, finds oft a heavy fate, whiles too much known to all, he falls unknown unto himself. Let whoso else that list affect the name, but let me seem a potentate to none. My slender bark shall creep against the shore, and shun the winds that sweep the waltering waves. Proud fortune overslips the safest roads, and seeks amidst the surging seas those keels whose lofty tops in tacklings touch the clouds.
O base yet happy boors! O gifts of gods scant yet perceived! when powdered ermine robes with secret sighs mistrusting their extremes, in baleful breast forecast their faltering fates, and stir and strive and storm, and all in vain. Behold the peasant, poor with tattered coat, whose eyes a meaner fortune feeds with sleep. How safe and sound the careless snudge doth snore. Low-roofed lurks the house of slender hap, costless, not gay without, scant clean within, yet safe. And oftener shrouds the hoary hairs than haughty turrets reared with curious art, to harbour heads that wield the golden crest. With endless cark in glorious courts and towns, the troubled hopes and trembling fears do dwell.
Lord Conan, though I know how hard a thing it is for minds trained up in princely thrones to hear of aught against their humour's course, yet Scythians who forbiddeth not offence, if well he may, is cause of such offence. I could have wished, and blame me not, my lord, your place and countenance both with son and sire had more prevailed on either side than thus to have left a crown in danger for a crown through civil wars, our country's wonted woe, whereby the kingdom's wound, still festering deep, sucks up the mischievous humour to the heart. The staggering state of Britain's troubled brains, head sick and sore encumbered in her crown, with giddy steps runs on a headlong race, whereto this tempest tends, or where this storm will break. Who knows? But gods avert the worst.
Now surely, Gildas, as my duty stood indifferent for the best to son and sire, so, I protest, since these occasions grew, that in the depth of my desire to please, I more esteemed what honest faith required in matters meet for their estates and place, than how to feed each fond affection, prone to bad effects, whence the disgrace mought grow. And as for Mordred's desperate and disloyal plots, they had been none, or fewer at least, had I prevailed, which Arthur knows right well. But even as counters go, sometimes for one, sometimes for 1,000 more, sometimes for none, so men in greatest countenance with their king can work by fit persuasion sometimes much, but sometimes less, and sometimes naught at all.
Well, we that have not spent our time in wars, but bent our course at peace and country's weal, may rather now expect what strange event and chance ensues of these so rare attempts, than enter to discourse upon their cause, and err as wide in words as they in deeds.
And lo, to satisfy your wish therein, where comes a soldier sweating from the camp?
Thou echo shrill that haunts the hollow hills, leave off that want to snatch the latter word. Howl on a whole discord of our distress. Clip off no cause, sound out a perfect sense.
What fresh mishap, alas, what new annoy removes our pensive minds from wonted woes, and yet requires a new lamenting mood? Declare, we joy to handle all our harms. Our many griefs have taught us still to mourn.
But my tongue denies my speech's aid. Great force doth drive it forth, a greater keeps it in. I rue, surprised with wantless woes.
Speak on. What griefs, sir, your fates afford?
Small griefs can speak, the great astonished stand.
What greater sin could hap than what be past? What mischiefs could be meant more than were wrought?
And think you there's to be an end to sins? No, crime proceeds, those made but one degree. What mischiefs erst were done, term sacred deeds, call nothing sin. But what hath since ensued, a greater grief requires your tears. Behold, these fresh annoys your last mishaps be stale.
Tell on, my friends, suspend our minds no more. Has Arthur lost? Hath Mordred won the field?
Oh, nothing less. Were gods it were but so. Arthur hath won, but we have lost the field. The field, nay, all the realm and Britain's bounds.
How so? If Arthur won, what could we lose? You speak in clouds and cast perplexing words. Unfold at large and sort out our sorrows out.
Then list a while. This instant shall unwrap those acts, those wars, those hard events that all the future age shall ever have cause to curse, now that the time drew on, when both the camps should meet in Cornwall field, the appointed place, the reckless troops whom fates forbade to live till noon or night, did storm and rave for wars. They swarmed about their guides and clustering called for signs to fight. And fierce with uproars fell, they onwards hailed the lasting hours of death. The direful frenzy rose, each man his own and public fates all heedless, headlong flung. On Mordred's side were 60,000 men, some borrowed powers, some Britons bred at home. The Saxons, Irish, Normans, Picts and Scots were first in place. The Britons followed last. On Arthur's side there were as many more. Icelandians, Goths, Norwegians, Albans, Danes were foreign aids with which Arthur bought from France. A trusty troop and tried at many a trench. That now the day was come wherein our state for aye should fall. Whenceforth might men inquire what Britain was, these wars thus near betrayed. Nor could the heavens no longer hide these harms, but by prodigious signs portend our plagues. For lo, ere both the camps encountered copes, the skies and poles opposed themselves with storms. Both east and west with tempest dark were dimmed, and showers of hail and rain outrageous poured. The heavens were rent. Each side the lightnings flashed, and clouds with hideous claps did thundering roar. The armies, all aghast, did senseless stand, mistrusting much both force and foes and fates. 'Twas hard to say which of the two appalled them most, the monstrous air or too much fear. When Arthur spied his soldiers thus amazed, and hope extinct, and deadly dread drawn on, "My mates," quoth he, "the gods do scour the skies, the fates contend to work some strange event, and fortune seeks by storms in heavens and earth what pageants she may play for my behoof, of whom she knows she then deserves not well, when lingering aught she comes not at the first." Thus said, rejoicing at his dauntless mind, they all revived, and former fear recoiled, by that the light of Titan's troubled beams had piercing scattered down the drooping fogs, and greeted both the camps with mutual view. Their choler swells, while fell disposed minds bounce in their breasts, and stir uncertain storms. Then paleness, wan and stern with cheerless change, possessing bleak their lips and bloodless cheeks, with troublous trembling shows their death is near. When Mordred saw the danger thus approached, and boisterous throngs of warriors threatening blood, his instant ruin gave a nod at fates, and mind, though prone to Mars, yet daunted, paused. The heart, which promised erst a sure success, now throbs in doubts. Nor can his own attempts afford him fear, nor Arthur's yield him hope. This passion lasts not long. He soon recalls his ancient guise, and wonted rage returns. He loathes delays, and scorched with sceptre's lust the time and place wherein he oft had wished to hazard all upon extremest chance, he offered spies, and spied pursuits with speed. Then both the armies met with equal might, this stirred with wrath, that with desire to rule, and equal prowess was a spur to both. The Irish king whirled out a poisoned dart that, lighting, pierced deep in Howell's brains, a peerless prince and near of Arthur's blood. Whereat the air with uproar loud resounds, which eths on mountains rough rebounding rears. The trumpets hoarse their trembling tunes do tear, and thundering drums their dreadful arums ring. The standards broad are blown, and ensigns spread, and every nation bends his wonted wars. Some near their foes, some farther off do wound with dart or sword or shaft or pike or spear. The weapons hide the heavens. A night composed of warlike engines overshades the field. From every side these fatal signs are sent, and boisterous bangs with thumping thwacks fall thick. Had both these camps been of usurping kings, had every man thereof a Mordred been, no fiercelier had they fought for all their crowns. The murthers meanless waxed, no art in fight, nor way to ward, nor try each other's skill. But thence the blade, and hence the blood ensues.
But what? Did Mordred's eyes endure this sight?
They did. And he himself, the spur of fiends and gorgons all, lest any part of his scaped free from guilt, inflamed their minds to wrath, and with a valour more than virtue yields, he cheered them all, and at their back with long outreached spear stirred up each lingering hand. All fury-like, frounced up with frantic frets, he bids them leave and shun the meaner sort. He shows the kings and Britain's noblest peers.
He was not now to seek what blood to draw. He knew what juice refreshed his fainting crown. Too much of Arthur's heart, oh, had he wist how great a vice such virtue was as then, in civil wars, in rooting up his realm, a frantic fury far from valor's praise.
There fell Aschillius stout of Denmark king, there valiant Gawin, Arthur's nephew dear, and late by Ungle's death made Alban king, by Mordred's hand hath lost both life and crown. There Gilla wounded Cador, Cornish duke, in hope to win the dukedom for his meed. The Norway king, the Saxons duke, and Picts in woeful sort fell grovelling to the ground. Their prince and peasant both lay hurled on heaps. Mars frowned on Arthur's mates. The fates waxed fierce, and jointly ran this race with Mordred's rage.
But with what joy, alas, shall he return, that thus returns the happier for this field?
These odds endure not long, for Mars retires, and Fortune, pleased with Arthur's moderate fear, returns more full and friendlier than her wont. For when he saw the powers of fates opposed, and that the dreadful hour was hastened on, perplexed, much in mind, at strength resolves that fear is covered best by daring most. Then forth he pitched, the Saxon duke withstood, whom with one stroke he headless sent to hell. Not far from thence he spied the Irish king, whose life he took as price of broken truce. Then Cador forward pressed, and haply met the traitor Gilla, worker of these wars, of whom by death he took his due revenge. The remnant then of both the camps concur, they Britons all, or most few foreigns left. These wage the wars, and hence the deaths ensue. Nor t'one nor t'other side that can destroy her foes so fast as 'tis itself destroyed. The brethren broach their blood, the sire, the sons. The son again would prove too much by too much wrath, that he whom thus he slew was not his sire. No blood nor kin can swage their ireful moods, no foreign foe they seek nor care to find. The Briton's blood is sought on every side. A vain discourse it were to paint at large the several fates and foils of either side, to tell what groans and sighs the parting ghosts sent forth, who dying bare the fellest breast, who changed cheer at any Briton's fall, who oftenest stroke, who best bestowed his blade, who vented most, who stood, who fell, who failed. The effect declares it all. Thus far the field of both these hosts, so huge and main at first, there were not left on either side a score, for son and sire to win and lose the realm. The which, when Mordred saw, and that his sire gainst foes and fates themselves would win the field, he sighed, and twixt despair and rage he cried, "Here, Arthur, here! And hence the conquest comes. Whilst Mordred lives, the crown is yet unwon." Whereat the Prince of Prowess, much amazed, with thrilling tears and countenance cast on ground, did groaning fetch a deep and earnful sigh. Anon they fierce encountering both concurred with grisly looks and faces like their fates. But disparate minds and inward moods unlike, the sire with mind to safeguard both or twone, the son to spoil the twone or hazard both. No fear nor fellness failed on either side. The wager lay on both their lives and blood. At length, when Mordred spied his force to faint, and felt himself oppressed with Arthur's strength, oh, hapless lad, a match unmeet for him! He loathes to live in that afflicted state, and valiant with a forced virtue, longs to die the death in which perplexed mind, with grinning teeth and crabbed looks, he cries, "I cannot win! Yet will I not be won! What? Should we shun our fates, or play with Mars, or thus defraud the wars of both our bloods, whereto we do reserve ourselves, or why be we not sought ere this amongst the dead? So many thousands murdered in our cause, must we survive, and neither win nor lose? The fates that will not smile on either side may frown on both." So saying, forth he flings, and desperate runs on point of Arthur's sword. A sword, alas, prepared for no such use, whereon, engored, he glides till near approached. With dying hand he hews his father's head. So through his own annoy he noys his liege, and gains by death access to daunt his sire. There Mordred fell, but like a prince he fell, and as a branch of great Pendragon's graft his life breathes out, his eyes forsake the sun, and fatal clouds infer a lasting eclipse. There Arthur, staggering scant, sustained himself. There Cador found a deep and deadly wound. There ceased the wars, and there was Britain lost. There lay the chosen youths of Mars. There lay the peerless knights, Bellona's bravest train. There lay the mirrors rare of martial praise. There lay the hope and branch of Brutus suppressed. There fortune laid the pomp, prime of Britain's pride. There laid her pomp, all topsy-turvy turned.
Cruel griefs, spare not to stretch our strengths, whiles baleful breasts invite our thumping fists. Let every sign that mournful passions work express what piteous plights our minds amaze. This day supplants what no day can supply. These hands have wrought those wastes that never age, nor all the brood of Brute shall e'er repair, that future men may joy the surer rest. These wars prevent their birth and nip their spring. What nations erst the former age subdued, with hourly toils to Britain's yoke, this day hath set at large, and backwards turned the fates. Henceforth the kerns must safely tread their bogs. The Scots may now their inroads old renew. The Saxons well may vow their former claims, and Danes without their danger drive us out. These wars found not the effect of wonted wars, nor doth their weight the like impression work. Their several fates annoyed but several men. Here all the realm and people find one fate. What there did reach but to a soldier's death contains the death of all the nation here. These blades have given this isle a greater wound than time can heal the fruit of civil wars. A kingdom's hand hath gored a kingdom's heart.
When fame shall blaze these acts in later years, and time to come, so many ages hence, shall reports our toils and British pains, or when perhaps our children's children read our woeful wars displayed with skillful pen, they'll think they hear some sounds of future facts and not the ruins of old pomp long past. 'Twill move their minds to wrath and frame afresh new hopes and fears and vows and many a wish. And Arthur's cause shall still be favoured most. He was the joy and hope and hap of all, the realm's defence, the sole delay of fates. He was our wall and fort. Twice 13 years his shoulders did Britain's state support. While yet he reigned, no foreign foes prevailed, nor once could hope to bind the Britain's bounds. But still both far and near were forced to fly. They thralled to us, we to us, so ourselves were free. But now, and henceforth, adieu that hope, adieu that pomp, that freedom, rule and all. Let Saxons now, let Normans, Danes, Scots enjoy our meadows, fields and pleasant plains. Come, let us fly to mountains, cliffs and rocks, a nation hurt and ne'er in case to heal. Henceforth the weight of fates thus fallen aside, we rest secure from fear of greater foil. Our leisure serves to think on former times, and now what erst we were, who now are thus.
Britain's prosperous state, where heavenly powers but half so willing to preserve thy peace, as they are prone to plague thee for thy wars. But thus, O gods, yea, thus it likes you still, when you decree to turn and touse the world, to make our errors cause of your decrees. We fretting fume, and burning wax right wood. We cry for swords and harmful harness crave. We rashly rave, whiles from our present rage you frame a cause of long foredeemed doom.
When Britain so desires her own decay, that even her native brood would root her up, seemed it so huge a work, O heavens, for you to tumble down and quite subvert her state, unless so many nations came in aid? What thirst of spoil, O fates in civil wars, were you afraid to faint for want of blood? But yet, O wretched state in Britain's fond, what needed they to stoop to Mordred's yoke, or fear the man themselves so fearful made? Had they but linked their friends in Arthur's band and joined their force against the foreign foes, these wars and civil sins had soon succeed, and Mordred, reft of rule, had feared his sire.
Would gods these wars had drawn no other blood than such as sprang from breasts of foreign foes, so that the fountain fed with changeless course had found no nearer vents for dearer juice, or if the fates so thirst for British blood and long so deeply for our lost decay, oh, that this rest were spared and safe reserved, both Saxons, Danes, and Normans most of all. Hero, civil wars have worn us out. Must Britain stand a borrowed blood for brute?
When prosperous haps and long-continuing bliss have passed the ripeness of their budding growth, they fall and falter like the mellow fruit surcharged with burden of their own excess. So fortune, wearied with our often wars, is forced to faint and leave us to our fates. If men have minds presaging aught their harms, if ever heavy heart foreween her woe, what Briton lives so far removed from home in any air or pole or coast abroad, but that even now, but through nature's sole instinct, he feels the fatal sword imbrue his breast, wherewith his native soil for aye is slain? What hopes and haps lie wasted in these wars? Who knows the foils he suffered in these fields?
Come, Cador, as our friendship was most firm throughout our age, so now let's link as fast. Thus did we live in wars, thus let us die in peace, and arm in arm partake our fates. Our wounds, our grief, our wish, our hap alike, our end so near, all crave each other's help.
O King, behold the fruit of all our fame. Lo, here our pomp consumed with ourselves, what all our age with all our wars had won, lo, here one day have lost it all at once. Well, so it likes the heavens, thus fortune jibes, she hoisteth up to hurl the deeper down.
Sacred Prince, what sight is this we see? Why have the fates reserved us to these woes? Our only hope, the stay of all our realm, the pillar of our state, the sore oppressed. Oh, would the gods had favored us so much that as we lived partakers of your pains, and likewise joyed the fruits of your exploits, so having thus bereft our sovereign's bliss, they had with more indifference doom conjured the subjects both and sovereign's bane in one. It now, alas, engendereth double grief, to rue your want and to bewail our woes.
Rue not, my Britons, what my rage hath wrought, but blame your king, that thus hath rent your realm. My meanless moods have made the fates thus fell, and too much anger wrought in me too much. For had impatient ire endured abuse, and yielded where resistance threatened spoil, I mote have lived in foreign coasts unfoiled, and 60,000 men had been unmoaned. But wrong incensing wrath to take revenge preferred chance before a better choice.
'Twas Mordred's wrong and too unjust deserts that justly moved your highness to such wrath. Your claim required no less than those attempts. Your cause right good was praised and prayed for most.
I claimed my crown. The cause of claim was good. The means to claim it in such sort was bad. Yea, rather than my realm and native soil should wounded fall, thus bruised with these wars, I should have left both realm and right and all, or endured the death ordained by Mordred's oath.
And yet, so far as Mars could find a mean, you hateless sought the safeguard of them all. Where to the better cause a badder chance to draw, you still inclined, preferring oft the weaker side, sometimes for love, sometimes for right, as fortune swayed your son, yourself, so pity spared what reason sought to spoil, till all at length with equal spoil was spent.
Would gods your mind had felt no such remorse, and that your foes had no such favour found, so might your friends have had far friendlier fates, if rebels for their due deserts had died. The wicked's death is safety to the just. To spare the traitors was to spoil the true. Of force he hurts the good that helps the bad, in that you sought your country's gain, 'twas well, in that you shunned not her loss, 'twas hard. Good is the friend that seeks to do us good, a mighty friend that doth prevent our harms.
Well, so it was. It cannot be redressed. The greater is my grief that sees it so. My life, I feel, doth fade, and sorrows flow, the rather that my name is thus extinct. In this respect, so Mordred did succeed. Oh, that myself had fallen and Mordred lived, that having conquered all my foes but him, I mote have left you him that conquered me. O heavy, wretched lot, to be the last that falls, to view the burial of my realm, where each man else hath felt his several fate. I only pine, oppressed with all their fates.
Although your highness do sustain such grief as needs enforceth all your realm to rue, yet since such ruth affordeth no relief, let due discretion swage each cureless sore, and bear the harms that run without redress. The loss is ours, that lose so rare a prince. You only win that see your foe here foiled.
A causeless foe. When wars did call me hence, he was in years but young, in wit too old. As virtue shineth most in comeliest whites, when inward gifts are decked with outward grace, so did his wit and feature feed that hope, which falsely trained me to this woeful hap. His mind transformed thus, I cannot choose but long to see what change his face sustains. My blood and kindred, doubled in his birth, inspires a mixed and twice descending love, which drives my dying veins to wish his view. Unhelm his luckless head, set bare his face, that face which erst pleased me and mine too much.
See, worthiest king, the hope of all your realm, had not his lust to rule prevented all.
I see, alas, I see. Hide, hide again, oh spare mine eyes, a witness of my crimes, a fearful vision of my former guilt, a dreadful horror of a future doom, a present gall of mind. Oh, happy they whose spotless lives attain a dreadless death. And thou, oh hapless boy, oh spite of fates, what mote I term thee? Nephew? Son? Or both? Alas, how happy should we both have been, if no ambitious thought had vexed thy head, nor thou thus strived to weave thy father's rule, but stayed thy time and not forestalled us both.
The hot-spurred youth that forced the forward steeds, whiles needs he would his father's chariot guide, neglecting what his sire had said in charge. The fires which first he flung about the poles himself at last, most woeful wretch inflamed, so too much love to hover in the heavens made him to pay the price of rash attempts.
What ruth, rent the woeful father's heart, that saw himself thus made a sonless sire. Well, since both heavens and hell conspired in one to make our ends a mirror to the world, both of incestuous life and wicked birth, would gods, the fates that linked our faults alike, had also framed our minds of friendlier molds. But as our lineage had approached too near, so our affections had not swerved too far. Then, mote, I've lived to enlarge the Britons' praise in rearing Eths, the first triumphant Troy, and after thou, succeeding mine attempts, have spent thy courage in a juster cause. But 'twould not be. Ambition grew too great. We could not join our minds. Our fates we joined, and through thy blood a way was made to mine.
And must we needs, O worthiest peers, forego by this untimely fate our greatest hope, that in our ripest years and likeliest time your chiefest force should on this sudden fall.
See our idle hopes, our brittle trust.
Our vain desires, our over-fickle state, which though a while they sail on quiet seas, yet sink in surge ere they arrive to road. O woeful wars! O Mordred's cursed pride, that thus hath wrought both king and kingdom's woe!
Let plaints and mournings pass. Set moans apart, they made much of themselves, yea, too much they loved to live, that seeing all their realm thus topsy-turvy turn, would grudge to die.
Yea, sure. Since thus, O fates, your censure seems, that free from force of foreign foes there rests, that Mordred reap the glory of our deaths. Be it so. Drive on your doom, work your decree. We fearless bide what banes soe'er you bid. And though our ends, thus hastened to your hests, abruptly break the course of great attempts, yet go we not inglorious to the ground. Set wish apart, we have performed enough. The Irish king and nation wild we tamed, the Scots and Picts and Orchid Isles we won, the Danes and Goths and Friesland men, with all the isles inserted near those seas, and next the German king and Saxons we subdued. Not France that could prevail against our force, nor lastly Rome, that rues her pride suppressed. Each foreign power is parcel of our praise. No titles wont to make our foes afraid. This only now I crave, O fortune, erst my faithful friend. Let it be soon forgot, not long in mind nor mouth, where Arthur fell. Yea, though I conqueror die and full of fame, yet let my death and part your rest obscure. No grave I need, O fates, nor burial rites, nor stately hearse, nor tomb with haughty top, but let my carcass lurk, yea, let my death be I unknown, so that in every coast I still be feared and looked for every hour.
Lo, here the end that fortune sends at last to him, whom first she heaved to highest hap. The flattering look wherewith he long was led, the smiling fates that oft had fed his fame, the many wars and conquests which he gained, are dashed at once. One day infers that foil whereof so many years of yore were free.
O willing world to magnify man's state, O most unwilling to maintain the same, of all misfortunes and unhappy fates, 'tis the unhappiest seem to have been happy once. 'Twas Arthur's soul that never found his joys disturbed with woe, nor woes relieved with joy. O prosperous state, all heavenly powered aspired, now made a wretch, not one that spares his spoil.
Yea, fortune's self in this afflicted case exacts a pain for long-continued pomp. She urgeth now the bliss of wonted weal, and bears him down with weight of former fame. His praises past be present shame. O fickle trust, whilst fortune chops and changeth every chance, what certain bliss can we enjoy alive, unless whilst yet our bliss endures we die.
Yea, since before his last and utmost gasp none can be deemed a happy man or blessed, who dares commit himself to prosperous fates, whose death prepared attends not hard at hand, that sithence death must once determine all, his life may sooner fly than fortune flit.
Now, Gorlois, sage thyself. Pride hath his pay, murder his price, adultery his desert, treason his meed, disloyalty his doom. Wrong have his wreak, and guilt his guerdon bears. Not one abuse erst offered by thy foes, but since most sternly punished, is now purged. Where thou didst fall even on the self-same soil, Pendragon, Arthur, Mordred, and their stock found all their foils. Not one have scaped revenge. Their line from first to last is quite razed out. Now rest content, and work no further plagues. Let future age be free from Gorlois' ghost. Let Britain henceforth bathe in endless weal. Let Virgo come from heaven, the glorious star, the zodiac's joy, the planet's chief delight, the hope of all the year, the ease of skies, the air's relief, the comfort of the earth. That virtuous Virgo, born for Britain's bliss, that peerless branch of Brute, that sweet remain a Priam state, that hope of springing Troy, which time to come and many ages hence shall of all wars compound eternal peace. Let her reduce the golden age again, religion, ease, and wealth of former world. Yea, let that Virgo come, and Saturn's reign, and years oft 10 times told, expired in peace. A rule that else no realm shall ever find, a rule most rare, unheard, unseen, unread. the sole example that the world affords, that Britain, that renown, yea, that is thine. Be it so. My wrath is wrought. Ye furies black, and ugly shapes that howl in holes beneath, thou Orcus dark and deep Avernus' nook, with durskish dens outgnawn in gulfs below, receive your ghastly charge, Duke Gorlois' ghost. Make room! I gladly thus revenged return, and though your pains surpass, I greet them though. He hates each other heaven that haunteth hell.
See here by this the tickle trust of time, the false affiance of each mortal force, the wavering weight of fates, the fickle trace that fortune trips, the many mocks of life, the cheerless change, the easeless brunts and broils that man abides, the restless race he runs. But most of all, see here the peerless pains, the lasting pangs, the stintless griefs, the tears, the sighs, the groans, the fears, the hopes, the hates, the thoughts and cares that kingly pomp imparts. What follies then bewitch the ambitious minds that thirst for sceptre's pomp, the well of woes? Whereof, alas, should wretched man be proud, whose first conception is but sin, whose birth but pain, whose life but toil, and needs must die? See here the store of great Pendragon's brood, the one quite dead, the other hastening on. As men the son but green, the sire but ripe, yet both forestalled ere half their race were run. As kings, the mightiest monarchs of this age, yet both suppressed and vanquished by themselves. Such is the brittle breath of mortal man. Whiles human nature works her daily racks, such be the crazed crests of glorious crowns, whiles worldly powers like sudden puffs do pass. And yet, for one that goes, another comes, some born, some dead, so still the store endures. So that both fates and common care provide that men must needs be born, and some must rule. Wherefore, ye peers and lordlings, lift aloft, and whosoe'er in thrones that judge your thralls, let not your sovereignty heave you too high, nor their subjection press them down too low. It is not pride that can augment your power, nor lowly looks that long can keep them safe. The fates have found a way whereby ere long the proud must leave their hope, the meek their fear. Whoe'er received such favor from above that could assure one day unto himself? Him whom the morning found both stout and strong, the evening left all groveling on the ground. This breath and heat wherewith man's life is fed is but a flash or flame, that shines a while and once extinct is as it ne'er had been. Corruption hourly frets the body's frame. Youth tends to age, and age to death by kind. Short is the race, prefixed is the end. Swift is the time wherein man's life doth run. But by his deeds to extend renown and fame, that only virtue works, which never fades.
So there. Yes. We have reached the end of the text. A slightly longer second half than our first, but still rattled along a lot of that with a good wind. I still enjoyed it. There's not so hugely keen on the epilogue, but Gorlois definitely won some favours there. yeah, there's a nice, cheerful, happy story there to be had for all fun and frolics for all the family. Yeah, it's interesting, the parallels between the first and second half, and the parallels between Mordred and his advisors, and the parallels there. The difference between public and private speech. It's a similar game. Obviously, second half we have this massive Nuncius speech, whereas the first half we had a relatively condensed. Here's what Arthur's been up to while you've not been watching from Nuncius, or Nuncius as opposed to Nuncius. The first time, which is about half the length, much shorter. In fact, even shorter than that. Much more just sort of praise stuff. So yeah, how are we finding that? The chorus has slightly more to say. The chorus gets involved in the action in the second half as well. Gets a step in, and of course we get a death scene for Arthur. Mordred doesn't get a death scene; he just gets reported up. He gets reported speech, but Arthur, full-blown death scene there.
But Mordred does get to have his body brought on stage and his sort of, helmet taken off and all the rest of it, which could be quite good.
Well, it's I suppose if you've got two actors and he's not doubled, then yeah, I mean that's a cheap second half for him, really, isn't it? Just up in the dressing room, doing the crossword, and then got to be dead in a minute. Get me armor. Rachael.
At the end, we kind of get like a personification out of the choruses. I mean, chorus 1 is referred to as the Britons or the Britons or Britains. I don't know. So maybe each of them could be a different representative of the different parts of the UK, or maybe they're different sections or different, maybe some of them are the personifications of Mars or of Fortune or of those other ones coming to talk to him directly. I don't know, advisors or something. I don't know, just possible things, possible ideas for future production to humanize them and why they come out of the woodworks and talk. We were doing that pastoral this morning, so maybe I'm imagining like the composition of the physical theater, the physical stage. This stuff's happening, and then when the chorus comes on, they're sort of to one side, just slightly separate, almost like these other figures representative of something that are, gossiping and talking, like the dads from the Glassett government or something.
Yeah, there is something interesting about the chorus throughout. I mean, in theory, the chorus are probably there, all the time watching, as you were saying, and I mean, some of the time the chorus are referring explicitly to the dumb show, which we haven't done. They're almost praising the themes that the dumb shows have been doing, and then I say in Act 5, they seem to be primarily there to be just people of Britain going, "Oh, we are sad at your funeral, Arthur." But maybe they have other layers that we want to put over them. Maybe they are all from different aspects of the kingdom. There's sort of this projection of this almost united kingdom in the narrative. Arthur's the one. He did it. Yeah, we did it, guys. We pulled it all together. I mean, it's all falling apart, but we pulled them all together. Kind of thing. Other thoughts about this the second time round? For those who've done it the second time round, and yes, it's still landed quite well. Liza,
just wanting to deal out some applause to everyone who read, but especially to Lynsey for literally being her own worst enemy, and twice, and to that seldom seen and obscure actor who read that excellent Nuncius speech.
Hey.
And I think, but not to belittle anyone else, because everyone did a fantastic job tonight. I loved watching and hearing you Even if I had to turn the volume down when Gorlois came on, because like just too scary, man.
Yeah, you can tell he's been practicing that this is the evil voice, can't you?
I was thinking of using that for the Lord Mayor. What?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the voice, definitely the voice of authority. Tom, Conan returns. For one of the only real recurring characters between the two halves of the play. Do you feel there was a journey?
I think you just had me going, oh, look, here comes a messenger. Oh, look, another messenger. Oh, look, this is a sweaty messenger.
This messenger has told us something that we're really sad about.
That was my role in life. And now, and lo, another messenger, another bloody messenger. No, I thought Arthur was beautiful in his melancholy, his weariness of the most terrible war, which is a civil war, and I think that has sort of resonated throughout history, that civil wars are always the most dour and dreadful things. And I think he brought that, or she brought that to fabulous. Yeah.
Yes, Conan's role in the second half is basically to just say, oh yeah. There isn't much to do. It's a shame that you had so much to do in the first half, and it's sort of fallen away a bit there. Eric.
I was just going to say that, like, sort of, it's not only a civil war, it's also a family feud, which makes it even worse. It's like sort of we always talk about sort of keeping the private now, for celebrities, politicians, whatever. But that doesn't happen, and when it spills over into the public eye, it sort of takes over and just gets worse and worse. Based on this.
Yes, the son, to try and kill his father, leaps on his father's sword so that he's within striking distance. There's something, really brutal about Mordred's rage in this half that's going on. That image that we're painted there. And again, I've got notes from last time. It's just going, the physical theatre component of that sequence of Nuncius could be really quite epic. And again, doesn't matter which actors. If they're in armour, you can still have Arthur off getting made up, ready for coming on dying, and have two other actors doing that. I'm quite interested now thinking about it. How small or how large does this as a live show become? Because you could extreme double it down quite a lot, apart from some of the bigger crowd scenes of we are lots of soldiers doing lots of soldiery stuff. A lot of the time it's a very small world, so I'm quite interested about that. I'm quite interested in the idea of actually seriously doubling Mordred with Arthur, so that with some good wigs, between the first and second half.
Well, it would be easier to do Greek style when they used masks.
I don't know whether I want to go quite so I feel that that it might be so much of this. Greek drama at least tends to be slightly shorter, depending on how you do it. And there are more songs and dances. We don't have the songs and dances.
Rachel's had her hand up for ages. I talked over you. Sorry, Rachel.
Sorry, my screen is actually. All my tiles are very small at the moment, so I will make them bigger so I can see what you're doing. Yes, Rachael.
No, I was gonna say to what you said before about Mordred's rage. I wonder how this would depend on how old a production cast Mordred as. But if he's a guy in his 20s, his dad's missed a lot of his life. It's not just it's not just the abandoning of this country he's done to go have these wars. And I think perhaps Arthur has a lot of rage that he's gotten to take out in these large political campaigns. And Mordred's perhaps angry at his absence as well, as well as wanting to take these things, as well as having a relationship with Guinevere, and ambition for the throne. And I wonder that intimate relationship and that relationship with his father that he's not gotten to have for 10 years, how that could play into the psychology, and how an actor could work with that. Because like you said, that jumping on the sword, to be close enough to, cut his own father's throat, it's almost like that's the closest he's ever gotten to an embrace from his father, is on the sword. That's like distant between them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really nicely dark. Love that. Eric, then Lynsey. Also, and then Greg.
Yeah,
I think Greg was technically ages better.
Yeah, Greg was ages ago.
Go on,
Go
Greg.
for it.
Go on, Greg.
All right. Gorlois was as people will have guessed, an extreme pleasure to win. But I just want to go back to one speech, and it's interesting we were talking about Civil War. Cador was a great part. Really good speeches, but that one of the seems it's so sour to win by civil wars, were it to gore with pike my father's breast. The images in that speech were just incredible, and such an argument of you've got to do it, but look at what you're going to do with it, if that makes sense. No, really interesting. Loved this half. Much easier than the first half, I thought, for getting into and finding it. But it's still a great play.
Eric.
I was just going to go back to basically what Rachael said, like the whole family absence thing. It kind of, if you think of other instances in literature, like for example, the one I was going to cite was the one from Homer, where you've got Odysseus away for 10, 20 years, actually, if you add it all up. And then you've got Telemachus, who looks up to him and sort of actually has never actually met his father, who is actually really not exactly the nicest person on earth based on what he actually does. Having sex with women and sort of running off and then, leaving them with kids and then moving on and killing people and doing all that stuff. Okay, obviously there's a different standard of the time, honor and family and duty, that kind of thing. But it's just interesting if you look at it psychologically, sort of. Telemachus only actually meets his father at the very end of the Odyssey, if I remember correctly, and then accidentally kills him at the end, if I remember correctly. I can't remember.
He does. I don't think he kills him.
No.
After the whole suture thing, but I'm not entirely sure.
I don't think he kills him, but
oh wait, no,
you're the actual Greek here, so.
No, it's Telegonus who kills him, who's his son by Circe or something.
Yes,
he comes in with spear or something from the sea or
Trigon, the poisoned spear of Trigon, I think. But yes, Telemachus doesn't kill him, but Telegonus does.
Yeah. But it's just
typo.
interesting to it's just interesting to think of this whole sons killing fathers thing.
It's also how similar they are. That Arthur, they both have this sort of debate about, do we fight, do we not? And Arthur turns up and says, do we fight, do we not? And he sort of doesn't go either way. There's sort of hawks and doves all around him. And then the Herald comes on and it is really rude and he just goes, well, sod this. And just dives and this big speech, but it's also a really big public speech as well. And there's soldiers all around at that point, and it's are they getting trapped in this public display of being fighty, rather than what they privately think? And then there's sort of these moments where he's left alone with Cador at the end, and it's just it's private thoughts again, and it's that dynamic that's going on. Lynsey.
I just wanted to mention trigger warning, the incest, because that seems to inform all of this as well, and yet we're not, we're not being asked to kind of condemn Arthur for that. He condemns himself, and I just think it just kind of makes it, it just gives it another really complex layer, to that relationship between them. And as Rachael was talking about this kind of embrace of death in their final grapple. It's quite. It's almost like the ghost of the sister is there, even though she isn't there, in the actual play, but she is somehow. She's conjured in some kind of way.
Yeah. Rachael.
To follow on from what Lynsey just said, is in the play, I don't remember, is it said that Mordred's biological mother is dead or alive? Because that, how you said that he's like there, she's there like in spirit almost. If she's dead, that means something. But if she's alive and she hasn't been living with them and she's somewhere off, and he says that he's done these things, what's actually happened to her? Like, what was her fate after she gave birth to Mordred? And how much does he get to see her or not see her? And how does that fit into his abandonment if he doesn't see her? And how much does he know about the things in the way that his father has treated his mother? If he does see her and she doesn't live with them, how much has she colored a picture of what his father is for him, colored in what his father is for him, because his father isn't in his life, because he's on a 10-year business trip to make client states.
Yeah, I don't know how much the playtext itself lingers on that. Certainly, I don't think the playtext tells us whether she's still alive or not as a mother. The argument of the tragedy does, and it does get mentioned in passing. But I don't know whether it lingers on any of those details. I think they're exactly the kind of thing that actors should be playing with. The backstory is explicitly there. It is stated in the argument, so it is part of the text on some level. It's part of the intention. But I say I don't know how often it comes up or how much detail we actually get beyond things. I'll go to Tom.
To me it was because he mentions, he's been away for 10 years. So Mordred must have been, 10, 12? I think he was still a golden most probably had a lovely childhood with a loving father. And then he, in his adolescence and puberty, leaves to go on this 10-year campaign. And that terrible fate then to come home and, not be allowed to land in your own kingdom. And how can you turn away from the challenge? But they want to, and then they just go, well, the rage has to come, the storm will come, and I have to rise to the occasion. And in saying all of this, there's some beautiful lines, there's some beautiful brush strokes. It's painted with real energy. Just fantastic brush strokes to the whole thing.
Both father and son, they do seem to be both guided by this rage. It's, Arthur maybe controls it slightly better. But when he's in his rage, he's got it as well. So it does seem to be something, though it maybe it comes out in different ways. Eric, you were waving.
Yeah, I was just gonna go back to hey, well, incest. Well, trigger warning, incest. Again, where we've got sort of other situations in plays where we have that kind of thing, and it does not end well because it's not meant to happen. And also, I think in a sort of who's going to inherit situation, like this one, if he was an acknowledged heir, then he would have a lot of like it would be very different for him and his mother. Whereas if he wasn't acknowledged up until recently, it would be. And I don't know, it's interesting because like it seems to be like that because Arthur was away for so long, he hasn't taken care of having an heir. Therefore, with Guinevere, who is his wife, whereas he doesn't, he just leaves Mordred behind, which is also quite like sort of interesting. Just like sort of leaving a king's bastard behind like that would actually like it would make more sense to have had him murdered or someone else, at least in a sort of historical sense. But I don't know, it's just an interesting sort of concept the way it's written.
Okay, we are broadly speaking out of time, unless anyone has any additional final thoughts they want to throw in. We may return to this sometime relatively soon. I have thoughts about how we might return to this for a more detailed part of our second look process, but we shall see. Sadly, the trickle trust of time has wended its course, and we must close the session. All that remains to thank all the wonderful readers for all their wonderful reading. Thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye. Ta-ta.